Hi world, it's the 28th of February 2020. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And this is my global forecast for March 2020. A little bit different than normal. I thought I'd have a sort of spot check on where everything is. So this is really for astrological students. So let's have a look. Let's start from the outside and work our way in. Pluto during March is still moving forward but slowing down rapidly. Pluto will inhabit 24 degrees of Capricorn for the whole of March. In itself, not a big deal. Viewed heliocentrically, Pluto's about 23 degrees Capricorn, so it's effectively 3/4 of the way through Capricorn. It's been in Capricorn since 2008. It's now 2020. So it's got about another 3 or 4 years to go before it gets ready to move into Aquarius, which itself will be a pretty amazing and interesting time. But that's not for another 3 years at least yet. Neptune is not slowing down. Neptune is still picking up speed. And Neptune is approaching fastest motion during March. Neptune is currently at 17 degrees of Pisces. It will be at 18 degrees of Pisces next week, and by the end of March it will be at 19 degrees of Pisces. Now this is particularly impacting on those Pisceans born around the 7th, 8th, 9th of March. And if you're one of these, then my goodness, are you knowing about Neptune at the moment with correlated fatigue, weariness, tiredness. Interesting times. Uranus is moving forward and picking up speed. Uranus is now at the end of 3 degrees of Taurus and will move into 4 degrees of Taurus over the majority of March, and then move into 5 degrees of Taurus at the end of March. So this is directly impacting on the lives of those people born around the 23rd, 24th, maybe the 25th of April. You've had a pretty crazy last year with lots of unpredictable changes, and it all seems to be reaching some type of conclusive end game over this coming month. Saturn in March is changing sign. Now this is part of its forward, retrograde movement thing over the coming 9 months. So it's not a big deal, but Saturn will be leaving Capricorn and moving into Aquarius this month. It will then retrograde back into Capricorn in about 3 months' time. So it's not really, the Saturn isn't leaving Capricorn for good. But at the moment, Saturn is now just entering 28 degrees of Capricorn, and he'll end the month at about 0.5 degrees of Aquarius. So if you're one of those people who happens to be born around the 19th, 20th, 21st of January, then boy, are you experiencing Saturn's attentions right now. Jupiter firmly established in Capricorn, and indeed there will be, Jupiter is brewing. Jupiter is brewing fast. He's catching up with Pluto rapidly. We start the month with Jupiter at 19 degrees of Capricorn. We end the month with Jupiter at 24 degrees of Capricorn. So bearing in mind that Pluto spends the entire month at 24 degrees of Capricorn, the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, which becomes exact for the first time around the 3rd, 4th of April, is getting stronger and stronger. And the more we get into March, the more I'll be doing videos on the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction and what that means. Mars is in Capricorn right the way through to the 30th of March, and then it moves into Aquarius and it ends the month at 0 degrees of Aquarius. Mars is rapidly becoming a major mover and shaker. As we speak, Mars is in relatively early Capricorn, in the first half of Capricorn, and for the first 2 weeks of this month, Mars is not making a big deal. He will be sextiling Neptune. And the Mars sextile Neptune, which is rather nice for a few people, will be around the 14th, 15th of March. Nice. Then Mars will conjunct both Jupiter and Pluto within the space of a couple of days. And there will be a brief period of time where, say, from the 17th, 18th through to the 23rd of March, so the period around the equinox, there will be a really strong conjunction in the sky of Mars, Jupiter and Pluto. This, to my mind, is one of the 3 hot spots of the year. It's a major trigger point. It's going to affect lots and lots of people individually. It's also going to have a massive impact on the world, geophysically and politically and economically. With Mars conjunct Jupiter, okay, this is something that happens every 26 months, 27 months. It's not a big deal. It generally brings a lot of enthusiasm and optimism. Quite happily together, these 2 signs. Mars likes being in Capricorn. Mars conjunct Pluto at the same time. There's something sharp, laser-like, scalpel-like here. Mars conjunct Pluto can bring up a lot of deep-rooted poison. It can bring up a lot of deep-rooted anger. Stuff that's been festering for a long time. There can be a lot of vitriol. And there can be sudden, sharp outbursts or explosions. It's quite an explosive aspect. And when Jupiter's on top of it, this is going to amplify things massively. So 1 in 5 people will have a major point in their chart somewhere between 20 and 25 degrees of the cardinal signs. So it seems to me that this period around the 3rd week of March, 17th to the 23rd of March, it's a real stinker. It's a real critical one. A lot of people are going to get hammered at this time, and for everyone the advice is really clear. Go and dig the garden, walk the dog, get down the gym, use your energy so that it doesn't use you. There's going to be a lot of suppressed anger coming up, and if you give into it, then you're going to end up saying or doing something that you later regret. It's also a time where in the world people are going to act first and think later. And there's going to be a lot of rash decisions. And I have to say it's one of the 2 most difficult times of the year. The second one for those astrological students amongst you will be around the new moon of October the 16th. And if you want to have a look at that horoscope for the 16th of October, the new moon, when the sun and moon are together, opposite Mars, square Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, that's the equivalent of what we're coming up for in March. But March is much more specific. It's much more Mars conjunct Pluto, not squared to it. So it's much more acerbic, direct. It's like a homeopathic laser. It's like a dart going into a dartboard. There's a poison going to be suddenly released. And with Jupiter amplifying it, things could explode rapidly around the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd of March. Mars will end the month moving into Aquarius, and the Mars-Saturn conjunction happens on the 31st of March. This is not also an easy aspect. Mars conjunct Saturn can be quite cruel. It can be quite harsh, hard, ruthless. Not mercenary, because mercenary is cruel and callous, but ruthless as in yes, no, black, white. Instantaneous, immediate actions, needs doing, do it, deal with the consequences after. So the last 10 days of March seem to be a pretty critical time for the world and all of its inhabitants. Venus starts the month in Aries, passes throughout Taurus, almost completely through Taurus in the last 3 weeks of March. It will conjunct Uranus in Taurus around about the 8th of March, but Venus by transit, particularly at this time, I don't see it as that big an influence. Unlike the Mercury Retrograde, which is ongoing. Mercury's been in retrograde now for a week and a half. It's going to stay retrograde until the 10th of March at 3:44 a.m. UK time. So make your own relevant time zones on this on the 10th of March. As Mercury stands still, it's not really impacting in terms of transit to any other planet. But as Mercury then moves forward and it ends the month halfway back through Pisces, clearing its own retrograde shadow around the 28th, 29th, 30th of March, it's brewing. Once it gets into April, it will conjunct Neptune, and then as it gets into April onwards and passes through Aries, things are going to pick up speed. There's going to be a lot more faster, less rigid, less stubborn developments in April, but that's April, not March. The new moon in March is on the 24th of March at around about 9:30 a.m. UK time. We'll still be in winter time by then. It's taking place at 4 degrees of Aries, which is not a particularly difficult aspect, although it is worthy of note that the new moon in April will be conjunct Uranus. We'll deal with that one another time. The full moon in March, on the 9th of March, at 5:49 p.m. UK time, is pretty much opposite Neptune. Now, I've spoken enough about viruses. You can see my other videos on this. I'm getting slagged so much, and not all of my reporting has been 100%. I got it wrong on a couple of things, but not majorly wrong. I mean, the influence that I'm talking about is still there, but I'm actually quite sensitive, so I'm not going to repeat some of the things I've said because I just don't need the trolls. Besides that, I think most of you are bots anyway, generated by political parties with personal interest, but that's probably my own paranoia. That full moon opposite Neptune is certainly colouring the way the world sees things, and it's quite likely to lead to an increased level of hype and spin and over-exaggeration and over-emphasis on situations, making them far stronger than they need be. I still maintain that the more we get into the second half of March, or at least by the start of April, we should see a downturn in the levels of crises that's besetting the world at the moment. But I still reckon that the last 10 days of March are absolutely critical. And to all of you as individuals, I say from an astrological perspective, bear this in mind. Do not go to extremes of behaviour, because it won't work. And you only end up digging yourself an even deeper hole. The hardest thing to do at this time is going to be to step back and look at things from a more measured and considered perspective. And yet that is exactly what, as an astrologer, I'm asking people to do. Not to buy into the hype and spin, not to take definitive action at that time, because any action that takes you to an extreme will be the wrong action. And if that Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, or then the Mars, Saturn conjunction is hitting your chart, then, well, be your own astrologer, be your own counsellor. And again, choose not to overreact. Wise and considered action. On the one hand, you can't not act. You have to do something. Because if you don't do something, then something will get done. And it's better to act than react. But act in a way that you'll be pleased and considered with, as opposed to something where you will later regret having jumped in head first. It's okay to be projective and assertive, not confrontational and aggressive. March is going to... The last 10 days of March are probably going to change the future for a lot of us. It's going to be a really interesting time, and it's probably going to get a bit manic. I am actually going away on my travels, but I'll be back by then. Catch you later, world. Bye.